Today's workshop is called Taking Better Lecture Notes, and just a quick word about the one next week. It's called How to Predict Test Questions. This is the first one of 5 workshops in a row, I think it is, that all have that terrible T word in it, which is test or tests. So it's kind of a long series in how to become a great test taker, which always helps. Okay, so that's what's coming up next week. Now, I wanted to ask everybody a question before we start. And again, participation is welcome in these workshops. We're talking about taking notes while teachers are lecturing today. So my question is kind of a simple one, but I don't know if you've ever thought of this. Why is it important or helpful for you to take notes while a teacher is talking? What's the whole point of even doing that? To remember? Yeah, one of the things that is the simplest way I could describe it is you want to take notes so that you don't have to rely on your memory later on. You could be a fantastic listener and you could concentrate really well on the teacher, but unless you have an amazing ability to remember that, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later when you're studying for a test on that material, it's almost impossible to remember what a teacher said. That's why you want to rely on your notes. And if your notes are good and they're complete and you can study a lot from them, you should do better as a result. The class that I teach, which is Learn 11, the study skills course, my students are required on every test, among other things, to do a short writing, probably less than a page, where they describe in detail something that I've taught them in class, kind of like they're teaching it back to me. And very often, amazingly often, especially early in the semester, I get a student who writes as their answer, "I don't remember." And how many points did they get for that? The big 0, right? And so what they're basically saying is, I was there that day, it was like 3 weeks ago, I remember what you were talking about, I even remember what you were wearing, but I can't quite remember what you said. And they're trying to actually go back and remember. That's dangerous. So that's why you write it in your notes, so that you can go over it, and when the test comes, it's still fresh in your mind. That's the goal, okay? So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm going to give you a handout that is sort of an outline of what I'm going to talk about. Hopefully I'll be able to get all the way through this today. There's always a lot that I would love to share and never enough time, so I'll go ahead and just sort of give you a bunch. You can kind of pass them back. If there are extras back there, you can just hold on to them and I'll get them at the end. And actually, let me put some here in case people show up late.
Recently, there was a European news article that was published that had a pretty interesting story in it. It was about people who had lung cancer and about the different chemicals that were in their body because of it. German scientists found that dogs could actually smell and detect the cancer. If they catch it, then that means that they could possibly prevent people from dying. The scientists would gather people who had cancer. They would have them breathe into a container. Now, some of them had cancer and some of them did not. Then they proceeded to pick 4 different types of family dogs. There were 2 German Shepherds, 1 Australian Shepherd, 1 Labrador Retriever. They trained the dogs to detect the smell of cancer in the jars, and when they successfully found one, they would have them sit down next to it and tap the container with their nose. After the training was completed, they collected the data. There were 100 people or so, and the dogs actually caught 71 cases of it, so it was pretty interesting. And they decided to test other types of cancer as well. People can have any number type of ailments that affect your body and that can affect the chemicals inside the body. And they found that the dogs could actually detect the difference between 2 different types of diseases or afflictions. It was the first time that they actually recognized that in Germany. It's known that when you have cancer, it releases chemicals inside your body that circulates throughout your bloodstream. And there have been a lot of reported cases where dogs had actually detected sicknesses in their owners as well. In cases of diabetes, the dogs can detect that as well, but they can only detect type 2. They can't actually detect type 1. The scientists tried to figure out what exactly the dogs were smelling and detecting in the cancer, so that they could help utilize the dogs to prevent cancer in people and prevent them from dying. It's interesting because I can remember my dog, Cookie. She died recently, but she would always know when I was sick. If I had an upset stomach or I was in the bathroom sick, she would always come and lay on me. It was strange because she always seemed to know when I was sick. Now, before she died, she would always come and lay on me. And a few years later, I actually was diagnosed with breast cancer, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe she already knew. I wish she had been able to communicate with me so I could have understood the fact that she might have known that I had cancer.